Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are really strapping in. We're looking at some incredibly high-stakes crisis management stuff spanning, the deep freeze in Eastern Europe, right over to the sheer volatility of the Middle East. And the sources we're digging into, they paint this huge, sometimes frankly terrifying picture of leaders right on the brink of war.
Exactly. And our mission here is to pull out those key insights. How do leaders navigate that knife edge? We're looking at two really different types of crisis. First, Ukraine, that long, slow buildup. Everyone kind of saw it coming, or at least the U.S. did. And then bang, the Middle East on October 7th. A total blindsiding shock. Understanding that contrast, it really highlights the role of intel, of communication, and yeah, definitely deterrence.
Okay, let's start with Ukraine. The crisis that, well, for the U.S. anyway, wasn't exactly a bolt from the blue. By April 2021, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is looking at satellite photos.
Right, showing, what was it, 110,000 Russian troops massing near the border.
Yeah. And his immediate thought, according to our sources, was Chekhov's gun.
If you see the pistol in Act 1.
It's going to fire by Act 3. Simple as that.
And Sullivan knew, the U.S. intelligence community sort of understood that military massing on that scale, it signals intent. And they felt they understood Putin's intent, too. CIA profiles painted him as driven by, extreme insecurity, but also this huge imperial ambition.
Fixated on Russia's old empire, obsessed with Ukraine.
Right. And there was history here, too, personal history for Biden.
Definitely. This deep frustration, apparently, that the Obama administration had, and I'm quoting here, fucked it up back in 2014.
Over Crimea. The feeling was they hadn't responded strongly enough.
Giving Putin an easy win, as Biden saw it. So that failure, that history, it really drove the strategy this time. Deter, communicate, don't get caught flat-footed.
So the immediate play was impose costs, but keep talking. Biden hit them with sanctions, expelled diplomats.
Yeah.
But then also proposed a face-to-face, that Geneva summit in June 2021.
And little details from that summit really stick out, like Biden being pleased Putin was actually on time.
Yeah, because Putin kept Trump waiting, 45 minutes for their first meeting?
Right. A small sign maybe, but symbolic. And this is the same Putin that Biden, years before, supposedly told, "I don't think you have a soul." Quite a history there.
And in that meeting, Putin did his usual thing, deflection. Pointing fingers at U.S. human rights, CIA prisons.
The classic whataboutism.
Exactly. But listen to the analogy he used, the Jungle Book. Calling the U.S. Shere Khan and everyone else these petty tabaki jackals.
Wow, that's not subtle. It really spells out his view of the world order, doesn't it? Who he thinks holds the power.
It really does. And things got much more serious by November 21. CIA Director Bill Burns went to Moscow.
Carrying a private letter from Biden.
Yeah, and Burns came back deeply concerned. His impression Putin had pretty much made up his mind to go to war.
Which is fascinating because at the same time, the U.S. intelligence was apparently exquisite, top-tier stuff.
The best they had. And the administration did something really unusual, these public downgrades.
Meaning they leaked their own intelligence.
Exactly. They told the world what Russia was planning. Troop numbers hitting maybe 175,000. Specifics.
Why do that? Why leak your own best intel?
To take away Putin's element of surprise. To basically say, we see you, the world sees you. It undermines any justification, any pretext for just rolling in.
Okay, makes sense. But here's the crazy part, right? Even with this super detailed, accurate intel being shared, apparently Ukraine itself, they weren't buying it.
That's the rub. Huge skepticism. Their defense minister, Reznikov, thought Putin was just posturing, trying to get Biden's attention, maybe squeeze out some concessions.
He pointed out the last big buildup just led to phone calls and that Geneva meeting.
Right. And even Zelensky, President Zelensky, was doubtful initially. The cost of a full invasion just seemed astronomical, unthinkable.
So it took until when? Just days before?
Yeah, February 19th, 2022. Literally days before the tanks rolled. The U.S. had to basically tell Zelensky, look, you need to accept this. It's happening. So, okay, the invasion happens, anticipation becomes reality, and immediately the focus shifts, right? Now it's all about drawing lines, defining boundaries to stop this thing spiraling into a world war.
And the biggest, clearest line was drawn by Biden himself, publicly, back in December 2021. He said sending U.S. troops into Ukraine, not on the table, period.
A really crucial statement, because that Article 5, the collective defense part of NATO...
An attack on one is an attack on all.
Exactly. That only applies to NATO members. Ukraine wasn't one. So Biden drew that line very clearly, very early.
But internally, was there debate? Did they consider maybe bluffing?
There was. Our sources say Sullivan actually floated it. Asked the intel chiefs, is there value in keeping the threat of U.S. troops alive? He even mentioned Churchill. Poker.
Playing the strategic ambiguity card?
Kind of. But the intel community's reaction was apparently less than enthusiastic.
How less?
Almost explicitly. Are you kidding me? The feeling was threatening direct U.S. involvement wouldn't deter Putin. It would make him move faster and bigger.
Wow. So don't poke the bear with that particular stick.
Exactly. No unnecessary escalation. So the focus became massive military support, but no U.S. boots on the ground, sending advanced stuff like the Javelin anti-tank missiles.
And just to give you some context on the cost, that Javelin system, that 200 grand a pop, missile included.
The price of a Ferrari Roma, basically, for one missile system.
So serious hardware, serious commitment.
Right. And this approach, Biden's team called it creating the necessary permission structure.
Meaning?
Getting everyone on board domestically, internationally for long-term, huge-scale aid without triggering Article 5 or direct conflict. It basically enabled the West to bankroll Ukraine's defense over the long haul.
Makes sense. But okay, the invasion happens. Russia surprisingly struggles, especially around Kyiv. But the danger didn't go away, did it? It just changed shape.
It mutated, exactly. Post-invasion intel started showing Putin getting desperate because of those battlefield failures.
And that's when the nuclear threat level went up. Way up.
Terrifyingly so. The estimated risk of Russia using a tactical nuclear weapon went from maybe 5%,
which is already too high,
to a coin flip, 50-50.
Oh my God, a coin flip. How do you even deal with that level of risk?
You need flawless communication. Biden ordered Sullivan, use all channels, talk to the Russians, send a message.
What kind of message?
Threatening, but not directly threatening. It had to be carefully calibrated. We see these incredibly high-level, blunt conversations.
Well, sorry.
Defense Secretary Austin talking to his counterpart, Shoigu, basically saying, we know you're thinking about tactical nukes. Any use on any scale would be a world-changing event, full stop.
Drawing another kind of red line.
A nuclear red line.
Yeah.
And at the same military level, General Milley talked to General Gerasimov, confirming the exact conditions under Russia's own doctrine for nuclear use. An attack on Russia that threatens the stability of the regime itself. They were literally mapping the edge of the abyss, making sure there were zero misunderstandings.
Thankfully, that catastrophe was avoided. But the conventional war, still grinding on, still incredibly costly. Ukraine pushed Russia back from Kyiv, a huge blow to the image of Russia's military might.
Shattered that image.
Yeah.
But then you hit the brutal reality of modern warfare, the thing that decides who wins and loses, often beneath the headlines.
And what was that key factor here?
Ammunition. Specifically, the 155-millimeter shortfall, artillery shells. Senator Lindsey Graham said at one point Ukraine was being outgunned 10-1.
10-1. You can't sustain a fight like that.
You just can't. That lack of ammo became this bellwether. It shows you how wars are really lost sometimes, not through lack of courage, but just running out of stuff. Your supply chain breaks down. Deterrence means nothing if you can't back it up, literally, with bullets and shells.
Okay, so if Ukraine was this long, drawn-out crisis where the U.S. at least had intelligence, the Middle East situation, particularly after October 7th, that seems like the complete opposite.
Total opposite. Our sources describe it as a true fog of war, a massive, staggering surprise.
Israel initially thought they had the attack contained, right?
Yeah, for the first few hours. Then the horrifying reality dawns. There are still maybe 1,000 Hamas guys inside Israel. The scale, the sheer brutality took days to really sink in.
And the intelligence failure behind it, it's just breathtaking.
Astonishing. Israeli analysts had basically dismissed the threat. They thought Hamas was, focused on governance, maybe placated by Israel, letting Gazans get work permits.
Small economic incentives.
Right. But the most stunning part, admitted by Ambassador Herzog himself, was that Israeli intelligence had the full Hamas attack plan.
They had the plan. How long before?
About a year before October 7th. But, as Herzog put it, nobody believed it. It was written off as just aspirational talk, not a serious operational plan.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so October 7th happens. Chaos, horror. What's Biden's immediate reaction, according to the sources?
His absolute top priority. Stop this from exploding into a wider regional war. Containment.
And that led to this incredibly tense moment just a few days later, October 11th. The U.S. National Security Team described it as living 5 hours and 12 minutes on the brink.
Yeah, that was when Prime Minister Netanyahu called. He urgently wanted the green light, essentially, to launch a preemptive strike against Hezbollah in Lebanon.
To take out their rocket arsenal, they estimated 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel.
Exactly. Take them out before they could be used. But Biden's response was instant and firm. No.
Why? What was the reasoning?
Risk. Massive risk. First, to U.S. personnel, there was something like 45,000 U.S. military and contractors scattered across the region.
Bro.
A wider war puts them all in danger. And second, Biden apparently warned Netanyahu directly. Even if you strike first, can your defenses actually stop the retaliatory barrage from Hezbollah? Are you prepared for that? He basically said, do not count on our support if you preemptively launch a war against Hezbollah,
Pulling them back from the brink.
forcing them to pause and think through the consequences. The administration clearly worried about getting dragged into another major Middle East conflict they didn't want.
And Biden carried that message personally, didn't he, when he visited Israel soon after?
He did. Privately, he apparently referenced the mistakes the U.S. made after 9/11.
The overreaction, the wars without clear endgames.
Right, urging the Israelis not to repeat those same mistakes born out of anger and grief.
Which leads right into the whole thorny issue of the day after. What happens in Gaza once the fighting stops? Assuming it stops.
A huge diplomatic challenge. Secretary Blinken was apparently working overtime just to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. Netanyahu was strongly resisting it.
Why resist aid?
Blinken had to argue that letting aid in was actually profoundly in your strategic interest. To maintain some stability, some international goodwill, to prevent an even worse catastrophe.
But beyond immediate aid, the visions for the future were just miles apart.
Completely. You had Netanyahu's top aide, Ron Dermer, arguing really fiercely against any talk of a Palestinian state. He framed it as giving a great reward for terrorism.
A non-starter for them.
Meanwhile, you had Arab leaders talking to the U.S. saying they could support a day-after plan, one involving new Palestinian leadership, a clear path towards a state.
But with a big condition.
A huge one. They apparently noted that any such plan required different leadership in both Israel and Gaza, basically saying this won't work with the current players. So a total diplomatic impasse.
And finally, the sources give this chilling picture of the Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar.
Yeah. U.S. intelligence concluded he's basically an ideologue with a death wish, living in his tunnels, his underground kingdom.
And willing to sacrifice everyone.
Willing to sacrifice every last Palestinian, seemingly. The assessment was he kept rejecting ceasefire deals, even ones that seemed favorable, because he genuinely believed the war was going his way, whatever that means in his calculus. Hashtag outro. Looking across both these crises, Ukraine and the Middle East, what really hits you is the sheer density of it all. Multiple crises hitting at once, demanding decisions at incredible speed. And these sources, they really hammer home that intelligence is vital, obviously, but it's not enough on its own.
Right. It's the willingness to believe it, to act on it, or the shock when it completely fails you. That seems to be what defines the outcome.
Exactly. Having the intel is one thing. Having the clarity and courage to use it or dealing with the fallout when it's wrong or ignored, that's the real test.
Yeah. For me, the big takeaway is seeing that gap. Leaders swimming in accurate intel, like in the Ukraine buildup, versus those totally blindsided by intel failure like October 7th. And in both cases, what defines them is that ability to just maintain focus under crushing pressure, to keep alliances together, and to constantly manage the risk of escalation.
Which brings us to a final thought, something for you to chew on. The sources point out how President Biden often seemed to connect his decisions or his struggles to really personal things. Looking back at past failures, like we fucked it up in 2014, or even mentioning the stress from his son Hunter Biden's legal problems as his real war.
So the provocative question is, what does it actually mean for global stability when a leader's critical decisions might be shaped as much by these internal factors, by history, by personal anguish, as by pure, cold strategic calculation?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to mull over as you process these incredibly high-stakes moments we've discussed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.